Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Christina Caesar, and I manage marketing and communications at Synergy Technical, and I have the honor of introducing today's speakers and moderating today's session. Today's webinar is a holiday-inspired virtual fireside chat on Microsoft Viva. So Microsoft Viva is a new product suite from Microsoft that aims to help companies improve their productivity and collaboration. In today's webinar, our two amazing speakers, who I'll introduce momentarily, will introduce the key features and benefits of Microsoft Viva, as well as provide an overview of how it can help your team work more efficiently and effectively. We'll also be sharing some best practices and tips for getting the most out of your product. Real quick, just a little bit about us. Synergy Technical is an IT consulting firm headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. We have clients in over 70 countries in all 50 states and manage over 3 million licenses of Microsoft 365 for our clients through our licensing and managed services practice. And now to introduce our amazing fireside chatters. First, we have Adrian Amos. Adrian is one of our top solution architects with specializations in both productivity and security solutions. If he's not in a webinar or filming a tech special on his bike, you can find him leading both productivity and security immersion experiences at Microsoft conferences and client offices all over the world. And next up, we have Dan Finn, a special guest, but historically a huge part in webinars. Dan Finn is our Vice President of Sales. He's worked with clients across verticals ranging from SMB to global organizations for over 10 years. He's asked by our clients for guidance to meet their business requirements with secure and productive solutions and has great experience for us to reference in our fireside chat today. And with that quick but raving introduction, because I know y'all have a lot of content to get to, I will hand things over to y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us today, Dan. I had actually kind of forgotten that you used to do the production of the webinars.
I've done a couple, but I'm a little rusty. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the invite. I hope to do this chair justice. Thanks for letting me loan it out today, Christina.
Certainly. And this is your first time in the studio. Yes.
Studio.
And enjoy the warmth of
keeping the hands warm
of the fire.
Marty's got all the nice toys. Like I should get up here a little more often.
You should absolutely get up.
Pretty nice setup. The lights are bright though. We'll see how I can handle it.
Yeah, you gotta clean off your forehead every once in a while. So yeah, we really appreciate you coming in and sitting with us today. Because while we've been doing a lot of like cloud surface management and solutions management discussions in this third Thursday series that we've been doing for the last couple of years, we started moving into an area where I realized that I was out of my depth, which, full disclosure, right? I love being the guy who knows a whole lot of things about a whole lot of things. But while we've done, like the Intra platform and the Purview platform and all these kind of things, and we've done all of the cloud management solutions, we hit on this set of name changes this year, and one of them was Priva and the other was Viva, right? And we knew at some point we were going to have to cover Priva, which we covered last month. And by the way, if you've missed it, go back and check the YouTube video. There's a very likely chance that if you're watching this, you are probably living in this area that's getting ready to have privacy regulations come online January 1. So again, worth going back and checking out. But Priva and Viva sound an awful lot alike, but they are not.
One's a prefix, one's a suffix. Right?
Yeah, but they, as Microsoft solutions, they could not be more wildly different. Yeah. So it's not something that I fundamentally understand from a usability standpoint, but I do understand that you have had some pretty serious successes, both internally and with some of our customers. So what is Viva?
Yeah, we'll see if I can pretend to be the expert.
Okay, all right.
What is Viva question, but I will take one step back, and I want to give you a story too, but okay. I've seen how the webinars have become more conversational as we get into the studio, and Christina has joined, and you have the little back and forth. So I like the fireside chat aspect to this, because hopefully what I can bring to the conversation around what is Viva and the different modules and the value that they can bring, the value that Microsoft can deliver through these suite of tools really, is both anecdotally from what I've seen across our client base, but then also how we use them internally. So we might jump back and forth a little bit between my personal usage and across our team, along with the conversations I've had with the Microsoft sellers and clients and partners of ours. So the anecdote I'd start with is actually an interview that I led a couple of weeks ago, and I was asked a pretty good question, saying in this hybrid remote workforce where most of our employees are remote, we're at HQ today and there are 7 people, if I can count off the back of my hand there, 7 people in the office, right? So how do you maintain a culture? How do you have a culture of inclusivity? How do you continuously learn? How do you march to the same beat of the drum, the same corporate mission when everyone's remote? And it was being put on the spot, my answer, I wouldn't be able to recall or paraphrase my answer. I'd like to think we have a fun culture, but beyond that,
We like to have fun here.
yeah, we don't use a lot of buzzwords. So that's a challenge I gave to myself today, is in describing the Viva suite, is to try to avoid buzzwords, and wish me luck, because it's a lot about, empowering employees and collaboration. But factually, that is what it does. So the Viva suite, to answer your question 5 minutes later, is really, it's a suite of tools. They're modular, that are all about creating a culture of inclusivity, continuous learning, of a common mission, and even, the capability of enabling your workforce, no matter where they sit or the tools that they have, as long as they have Viva and the 365 stack, of course, because we're talking Microsoft today, that they can be a productive and valuable employee within your organization. So we can dive in, I guess, to the different Viva modules with that high level understanding of what is Viva. I think there's 7 modules now. When it first came out, there was 4. There was the OG 4, and now there's 7, and I'm sure there's more to come.
Well, let's see if we can do this off the top of your head. Let's level set, because the 4 original ones, what were they? Do you know right off the top?
Oh, they're in my notes, but I won't look at notes. They were connections,
right?
Topics, learning, and fill in the blank.
Yeah. See, again, that's why we brought you in.
Yeah.
I'm putting you on your spot.
Insights.
Insights.
The
Yes.
one
Oh,
we'll
right.
talk about
Yes.
first. Yeah.
Actually, okay. So yeah, that is a great segue, because Insights reminds me an awful lot, and this is actually one of the ones that I have played with a little bit too. I don't get deep into the Viva space personally, because I as a solutions architect, I'm not usually looking for the answers. I'm usually generating the answers, right? So at least internally. So Insights I actually found very interesting, because I have a little bit of experience with this, and it reminds me. It used to be a part of Delve. Right, you remember Microsoft Delve? Well, so it's just still around, but it's kind of changed a lot over the years. And I know that Delve in its early days had analytics in it, and you could look and see like what were the files that you were using, right, and what were people around you using. But it would also look at your meeting habits and tell you where you were, wasting time and overlapping with other people. In fact, we used it internally with our previous VP of Sales to help her wrangle her schedule, and actually kind of brought her back off the edge of some burnout, right? We identified through the analytics.
You can do that?
Hey, it might, right? Because we very intentionally looked at what her meeting habits were as presented through my analytics, and said, you're not giving yourself any time to take notes or reclaim any time for actually working, right? Because she was emailing me at 7 o'clock in the morning, meeting people all day long, and then emailing me again at 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, hey, we might be able to work this. So, but what I've noticed is that obviously that's not part of Delve anymore.
Right.
And it certainly seems to be a part of the Viva experience. So is Delve still around as a functional tool, or is this fundamentally replacing it, or what are we seeing as how my analytics is shaping up? Are you using it?
Yes, under its new name as it hits my inbox. So I can't tell you the last time I've clicked on Delve. And I can't tell you the last time we've had a consultative engagement around the deployment of Delve and the end user training experience. What I've seen Insights become has, the old My Insights, and I say it's old because the way the email drops into the inbox now is Microsoft Viva. Right. And it's a briefing in the morning. I think I get it at 7 a.m. Eastern time. And I use this religiously. So, I could even speak on the calendar benefits it has. Absolutely. It talks to you about focus time, setting time aside, the virtual commute. We don't have a 20-minute car ride home anymore where you would listen to music and just unwind and be prepared for family time. So how do you, my virtual commute is walking downstairs now. So how do you prepare to walk into the kitchen and living room area and be ready to be present in your personal life and just drop everything that, your stressors from the workday?
Yeah, sure.
So literally within this Microsoft Viva email can say, book a virtual commute and say from 5:30 to 6 or 5 to 5:30, whenever you're done with your day, schedule this time to be cognizant of the stressors you have and how to release them. And they even partnered with Headspace, I believe it's called. Yeah. A third-party app that'll plug a little 2 or 3 minute video in just to help you I hate to say the word meditate, but it's
No, actually,
it's a
that's
form
what it says, I think, in the emails.
Yeah,
the
it might be.
email,
Yeah, it's if it's not full meditation, it's a form of meditation.
Yeah.
I haven't studied that category yet. But the email itself then to help you plan and prioritize your day, right? So you look at a schedule, and I looked at Monday's schedule, and there was 8 calls on the calendar. So 8 calls in what's supposed to be an 8-hour day. How do you get this done, right? Because there's still things that pop up. You need to be prepared going into call, and you need to take care of follow-up action items after your call. So how do you do that? The Microsoft Viva email sitting in my inbox from 7 a.m., I will leave it in my inbox, and it has action items right within it saying, remind me about this task. And you can say, remind me tomorrow, remind me next week, set a specific date you want it to remind you about that task. Where that's helpful is maybe you've sent an email to your team member, to a client, to a partner asking for something, requesting time on their calendar, and you haven't heard back. Like how quickly does that become just lost?
Right.
And then a month later, you're getting ready for work and you're brushing your teeth and like, oh, I totally forgot about that, right?
Right, yeah.
And some of us keep notes on our fireside chat tablet, and some of us keep notes on whiteboards off to the side of our desk. But Viva pulls this all up into a electronic digital format using machine learning, Delve, the insights, the graph, right, from the Microsoft tool set. And it'll call out now when I have 8 meetings in 8 hours on a day. It'll say you have this meeting at 9 o'clock. Here's a PowerPoint presentation that looks correlated to it. Here's a PDF. You've sent them an email before. We think this is all correlated. And here's your recent email to that contact, to the people on the invite. And I have all the info I need logging into that meeting. I can just have my insights email up, click on the PDF, click on the PowerPoint presentation. In my case, maybe it's a quote and an overview of Microsoft Viva, right? But it's all in one spot. So that plus the tasks, plus the virtual commute, the mindfulness about your schedule. I don't know how people don't use it in the world we're in. Like I live on that thing. I need it every day in my inbox.
Yes, I'll just tag onto that by saying that when the Viva emails first started coming in to my inbox, I did full disclosure, I rolled my eyes and was like, oh, come on, another touch point where somebody's reminding me of what I've got to get done, right? But I have also switched to being very reliant on that. And in fact, when I'm preparing for an in-person event, my calendar doesn't do a very good job of showing that I might need travel time to get there, right? Mm-hmm. My calendar doesn't show that I need preparation time to, build out content for doing a live webinar. But that email with that booked focus time, that's been a lifesaver, because I rely on my calendar telling you what my availability is. And I tell you, as you heard me say it, my calendar is 100% up to date, and you put something on there and it ends up backing up to 5 minutes before I'm supposed to be, doing a customer facing event. And that can be a challenge. So right. It has really saved my bacon. And so I begrudgingly turned it on and started accepting its advice a while back.
Yeah, and now we could talk, and those listeners or the viewers on the webinar here could probably raise your hand or laugh a little that, booking focus time on your calendar is different than actually having focus time.
Fair,
Who's been double booked when you tried to put an hour on the calendar to get things done. But that's probably a good use case for some of these other communication tools in the Viva set to help, collaborate across your organization and even externally in some cases. But to help create those standards with your culture and understanding, like when I schedule a meeting with a project manager, I can see their schedule, right? And I try to avoid back-to-backs because I know that they're typically leading. They have notes, they have follow-up action items they want to get to while it's top of mind. And if I put them on a back-to-back, I'm not their favorite person that day.
Yeah.
Right? So the tool helps you do that.
Well, then you're also going to get that nasty gram from Viva too, that you have a lot of overlapping meetings with the same people, right? Yeah. And maybe you can be a little bit more efficient and get stuff done.
I do love those statistics. They'll also embed at a higher level, I believe they're weekly or possibly monthly, the number of collaborators and the number of meetings you scheduled last minute and the number of meetings you scheduled with or without a Teams invite. And that's very interesting to me. And actually another metric it includes is time open to collaborate, or I'm going to butcher the actual title on it, but maybe it's time spent in meetings. So there's some weeks where you just feel worn out and you get that email and it says you spent 70% of your time in meetings. And consciously again now, right? It's pulled up what you kind of knew already, but it was subconscious. It gives you a data point that says you need to look at next week and figure out how to move some of these calls around, consolidate calls, refocus your time, because you need to be productive within the time you have.
Yeah.
And those emails have been invaluable.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned Viva having touch points with some of the other solutions inside the Microsoft 365 stack. I will say that when I was preparing for this event, I was poking around in some of the content in some of the Teams apps, because that's so Viva. If you there's no application for Viva, right? Viva is apps that you can open inside of Teams, and we'll get to a little bit of that and how we administer that and add those things in. But there is no overarching Viva app, right? So when I went in and started looking through the Teams content for Viva, the Teams apps that surface, I did notice that 100% of our existing Yammer content seemed to be now inside of a Viva component, and so I did some light touch binging, if you will, and it seemed to be a fairly common question: is Viva replacing Yammer? Specifically, I believe it was the Viva Engage section where I found all of our existing Yammer content surfaced. So what's the deal there?
No.
Okay.
The simple answer, it's a great question. Another anecdote or story is probably last quarter, maybe 90 days ago or so, a client came to me and said, we've outgrown our corporate intranet. It's hosted on a SharePoint page. They have a full team managing it, blog posts. They really leverage it quite nicely, but they were looking for more features beyond what SharePoint could enable for them. And they said, through our binging, which Bing does pay to use it, I recommend it. You can get points, cash them out at Starbucks. Through their binging, they said, this looks like a Yammer solution. Talk to us about Yammer. And I went, there might be another way, right? Said something we pride ourselves on at Synergy is being an advisor to our clients and understanding their actual business objectives before we just throw a product at them, right? Like we're not product pushers by any means. So we went and understand the business objectives, and we involved Microsoft in this case and said, I have a couple clients that use Yammer, and they use it quite effectively, but Yammer's biggest customer is Microsoft. So the idea that Yammer is going anywhere, like our partner access to Microsoft is, for most cases, either a team site or a Yammer page.
Yeah.
And if they're going to support it for themselves, they're probably going to bundle it in and keep it as a supported solution. So I don't see Yammer going anywhere, but I do see, and what happened with this client in particular is that while this product is still in some form of preview, I believe it might be private preview still, but Engage is one set, and I believe Connections is the other module that will actually be pulling data from different 365 sources and have integrations to others to pull that up into a singular UI that's embedded within Teams.
Okay. So Yammer's here for a while, because we know a lot of education customers are heavily invested in Yammer as well. So that's good news.
Yammer's here, and I have a nonprofit client that has 800, 900 different organizations that they help oversee, and they all use Yammer to the tune of like 17 or 18,000 users, on their Yammer page. I have another customer, multiple thousands of people. In that case, literally the COO was a new hire about 18 months ago and said, I used Yammer in my last org, we're going to use Yammer here.
Okay.
And again, in the same case, I got on the phone, I was like, are you sure?
Right.
This is rare. And in that case, it's a successful deployment. They use Yammer, IT supports it, and the end users enjoy it, right? But I think what you'll see is, in this case with the first customer I referenced that outgrew their corporate intranet page, is we flagged it as a 2023 project to say, let Engage get a little more fully baked, let it go GA. Let's see how it integrates with Yammer, with the SharePoints of the world. Let's see the governance that needs to, the mindset around your governance that needs to go into this tool before you roll it out, and then do a pilot and roll it out strategically. But in this case, I guess they'll end up using both solutions.
Okay.
Because some data may sit in Yammer and get exposed through Engage within Teams. Mm-hmm. Have we lost everyone yet? But I see Engage being the modern interface starting in 2023.
Okay, so Yammer will continue to exist. Users will be able to continue to go directly to Yammer if that's their preferred method of engagement, but Yammer content will surface into Teams through the Viva Engage interface, which will also then bring in content from SharePoint and other preferred locations.
Yep.
Okay.
And that probably sparks a whole another set of questions.
All right. So I know that that can be very complicated to try to wrap your head around, but But you also showed me Viva Sales the other day, and I gotta say, you seemed as excited as I usually do when I found a new toy to play with. So tell me about Viva Sales.
All right, this goes internal then, if we're going to talk about Viva Sales, because we turned it on internally 60 days ago. I think I saw it in private preview, and I reached out to our CEO and said, can I just get one license? I just want to see how it works. If it doesn't work, if it's painful, if there's an end user training required, we won't turn it on. So we turned it on, and immediately Viva Sales I can embed into my Outlook client. Yes, I use the client, not OWA.
It's all right, I won't hold it against you.
But I'm sure it's there too. I use the client, and then you can actually put it into Teams meetings. And I'll talk you through both the value that it's brought. And I've used it on customer meetings and actually shown them the output from the meeting, not as a sales trick, literally just the value it's giving our sales team and just how cool it is. So within Outlook, one of the biggest things I realized was the data integrity in CRM was severely lacking, to the fault of the sales team, right? I had emails with known customers we had worked with for 6 months or more where point of contacts that we talked with weekly were not in CRM.
Now by CRM, you mean Dynamics 365, I presume?
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
Fantastic. All right.
So the add-in within Outlook on any email that has an external contact will pull up the external contact and just say, do you want to add this to Dynamics 365? Why, yes, I do.
Right.
I figured it's going to take me to Dynamics 365. I got to go to a browser. I got to find their account page. Nope, right within the add-in within Outlook, it pulls their name, it pulls their email address, if it can find their title, organization name, and I can just click save and it goes right to Dynamics. And the first time this happened, I kid you not, I went and opened Dynamics in a browser. I went to the account page. Right. I'm like, I don't believe this. And it did. It's in Dynamics. So maybe 20 minutes before we logged into the webinar, I have a customer, we're doing a big project for them right now. And both contacts I just caught myself are not in CRM. And it's Viva Sales that helped me catch that. So from a data integrity perspective, from a marketing perspective, we use the data in CRM to accurately send messaging to customers versus prospects versus partners. So that's important, right? Now within that contact card, I can go even further. How much time do we have?
Yeah, I'll keep the timer running, yeah.
Within that contact card, I have the client's information, right? I can make a phone call directly from there because it has their phone number.
So it activates your team's call.
It activates my team's voice,
right.
And it keeps a record in Dynamics then of the call happening.
Okay.
The length of the call, I can add notes to subject matter. Do I do this all the time? No, but it's helpful to have it, right? I can have private notes that are just for my viewing, right? They're not organizational wide, they're not external, about the customer. So I've done everything from what type of customer, the seat count of the organization, the projects that are happening at the moment, if they're detail oriented or if they're more big picture from a personality type. And then of course it is a sales tool, right? It'll link to opportunities we have within that account. So that I've already identified, I can create opportunities. And within that contact card, it'll say, I think at this customer, you were working on these 3 opportunities. So maybe they had a troubleshooting question where one of those opportunities is actually the right fit, right? And I didn't have to sit there and think about it for 10, 15 minutes. What am I doing within this account? What do I see them going 6 to 12 months out? Right within the Viva Sales add-in in Outlook, it's all right there for me to say, oh, I should make that part of my response, right? Oh, where do we stand with, the next project, so to speak. So that's been awesome. Now, Viva Sales in a Teams meeting, you can send a Teams meeting from the Outlook client and it will automatically be added as a tab. Or you can send a Teams meeting from Teams and you'll have to manually add it in that case. But as long as there's an external contact on the meeting outside of your organization, you record and transcribe. So it's not like you're going to hide this from anyone. It's not one of those software applications that will record and transcribe and be a sales tool like in the background. There's third-party solutions out there in my inbox like every day. It's not that. So you record the meeting, you transcribe, and at the end, the output that you get from this is fantastic. So you get everything from listen to talk ratio, which if we were using it on today's meeting, it would be terrible for me.
Right, yeah.
But I think any good salesperson should be listening more than talking, right? Asking good questions, hearing what the customer is troubled with or is coming to you to talk about. So I take notes of our talk to listen ratio, specifically in like a QBR that we'll have with our managed services customers. and try to make sure that I'm not talking for 45 minutes straight and listening for 15 minutes, right? So that talk to listen ratio is interesting. There's also a pause ratio. So if you read any sales book, silence is okay, but it's the hardest thing for a salesperson to let happen. Okay, that was pretty good. So you can do a silence ratio, and then you can even do amount of transitions. So the amount of times maybe I stop talking and you start talking. And on the latest QBR, the amount of transitions was 300 something. And I think that was awesome, because that's what a collaborative business review between a customer and a vendor should look like, right?
Well, wasn't there also sentiment analysis too on?
So it kept going. Yep. So there was sentiment analysis. The one in particular you were on, and you did a nice roadmap of things to come. And it highlights in green or red on the recording what the sentiment was from external context, right? So it excluded all Synergy people and said, here's the transcription. And I could click on 47 minutes in, there's a red mark, and it would literally be, a feature that the customer wished they had in that product, or wouldn't it be nice if we could do this?
And as I recall, it also does speaker attribution too in that transcription. So like you can not just see that the customer was frustrated, but you can see specifically who was frustrated about it. Right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And that helps with, it will also pull out almost like you have an admin on your call. It'll take the meeting minutes and bring up all the call to actions to the actual person that they were assigned to.
Oh, okay.
So if I said, Adrian, can you follow up with a PowerPoint presentation from your roadmap slide deck? It'll say, Dan asked Adrian to follow up with PowerPoint, and you could jump right to the recording if you're looking for more details on it. And then the final piece, I'm not even done yet. I thought I'd talk about Viva Sales for like 2 minutes, and here I am, sales guy, right? The final piece was actually keyword recognition.
Okay.
So fascinating, marketing would chew this up, but you have 60 or 90 minutes where you're talking about many different projects, and this could be across any kind of sales team, right? So pharmaceutical, engineering, retail, to have the analysis of, in this case, of course, we talked Microsoft for a little while. So Microsoft came up 14 times, SolarWinds came up, Quest comes up, VMware comes up, Adobe comes up. How many times? Who said it? And then there's even, challenging words or names that were shared. So of course there was the names of the people on the call, because we transitioned who was talking a lot conversationally, but then there were names of people on the team. So you see someone from their security team get mentioned. I can click on the name, jump straight to the recording and say, why did we bring him up? Do I need to pull him in on the next call? It's fascinating analysis. So I'm encouraging the use of Viva Sales for anyone in your organization in a sales role. I think they'll get a ton of value out of it, and they'll probably thank you, because I'm assuming most people attending here are IT focused or security focused. I think if you're the ambassador and you deliver this solution to the sales team, you can see how excited it just got me for the last 10 minutes. It'll make their life easier.
Well, and it's interesting too, because a lot of what we've just been talking about with the Viva Sales integration with Teams meetings is actually a pretty high overlap with what we're expecting to see with the Teams premium licensing that's coming. I think we're expecting it next year to go GA.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Microsoft spent a lot of time at Ignite talking about syntax, right? And they talked a lot about machine learning and AI and how that's going to revolutionize what we're able to do. Just kind of like the internet itself revolutionized access to data. And they talked a lot in some of those presentations about the upcoming introduction of Teams Premium, about speaker attribution, about sentiment analysis, about these transcriptions, about the integrations with syntax. So I will be very curious to see if there's opportunities to align licensing more for a sales solution or potentially more for a Teams premium solution. Yeah. But it is fascinating. And like Dan did share the results of that with me, and it was shocking how much data was captured out of that. The speaker attribution alone was enough to send me into a nerd out, right?
And I'd say with about 99% accuracy.
Yeah.
Being detail oriented, we caught the one or two. We're like, no, that wasn't negative sentiment. It was just
And the one thing I will say is going to be, I think is going to be different for the Teams Premium, is that that's also going to do live transcription into multiple different languages as well.
Wow.
So whatever the native native language is of the attendees, they will be able to get the live transcription of that, and also the report that comes out should, I believe, be in their native tongue as well.
Yeah, I've seen across the Viva module, English, French, German, Spanish being supported.
Okay.
So when you talk about like scrolling your SharePoint environment to pull up analytics into an Insights email, it can handle, even for the global organizations, potential language barriers. It's going to be able to handle those.
Funny enough, so I did actually hear a conversation the other day that talked about some of those language barriers and some of the challenges that have come with training the AI to recognize languages. So apparently, German has 6 major dialects, right? I've studied German in college. That's what my actual degree is in.
All right.
6 primary dialects of German, and then there's Dutch, which we can argue about. I've had some fantastic arguments in my life about whether or not Dutch is a dialect of German. No offense to the Dutch in the room, but it's a fascinating ongoing conversation. Spanish, however, apparently South American Spanish is sufficiently different from Spanish that when you start seeing these AI models, they're actually tailored for Spanish, and they really have a hard time with South American Spanish. So if you're looking at solving for for challenges of communication, and you're thinking that Viva or potentially Teams Premium for the live transcription, you may actually have to be aware of what regions specifically you're servicing with the AI models. Now, we do expect that to continue to get better, right? I mean, these things do nothing if not get better over time. And we know also from looking at some of the other solutions in the Microsoft stack that they just keep adding more languages and more languages and more languages to support models. I mean, just Windows 365, we can now deploy that in like 40 different native languages. So,
and that's huge. I mean, we have people on our staff that can speak multiple languages, but people based in other countries, right? So when you look at, it's an interesting, see if you catch on to this one, topic you brought up.
Okay. All right. I see what we're doing here. Yeah.
Because it's an interesting aspect of maybe you're onboarding a new employee or someone got assigned to your team and they're trying to get up to speed quickly on an item like, what kind of languages do I need to support in my organization, right? That's another thing I think Viva can help address, those areas that typically a large organization is going to struggle with, or an organization with a footprint in more than one building is what I'll say nowadays, right? Is I'm going to be onboarding a new person January 3rd. And that new person's going to have the task of finding information or finding a resource that can tell them more as part of the onboarding process. So how would you do that today?
All right. So
question to Adrian.
Let's talk about that actually. And yes, Dan, I caught you mentioning topics, right? So
there we go.
And one of the core elements of Viva is topics, and it is one where I do have a little bit of knowledge, right? So topics is a fascinating thing because, again, we'll get to administration in a little bit, but I spent a little bit of time looking up Viva Topics, and I actually attended Microsoft's Airlift last week, but there was a lot of conversation around Viva and a lot of conversation around Viva Topics. Much of that entire event was under NDA, talked about roadmap stuff, talked about things that are coming up. But when you look at the public roadmap for Viva, the lion's share of the content is around topics. There's a lot of things that they have planned that are coming into that space. And what Topics is designed to do is basically give you an area where people can go ask questions, and you have curated answers to those questions that are, promoted and posted back out as being the right answer. You might think of it as like, you go onto Reddit or something like that, or some sort of a forum where people are asking questions and they can upvote answers and that sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a big area, and the thought is that you may have 20, 30, 40,000 conversations or questions that you don't think are that many, but they really are. They really can be that many questions and topics of things about how do I work here, right?
Right.
And we talked about how that was a
I still don't know how I work here.
Yeah, right. So and years ago when Delve first came out, I had a conversation with a Microsoft seller who said that Delve saved her life because when she was first hired, the person to whom she was hired to report was also escorted out. Oh. And so she landed with no knowledge of what her actual expectations were. So she went to Delve and looked at what are people in my department doing, to whom are they reporting it, right? And she was able to just sort of make her job up in a way that satisfied the requirement. And she's actually still very much at Microsoft and has a really awesome role, by the way. But anyway, but one of the things that was really interesting about Delve at the time was that you had a you page, right? You could go to your page in Delve and you could update topics that you knew things about.
Right.
You could identify yourself as a topic leader, right, around keywords. And then it also gave you a space to write like personal blog posts where you could make, available out to people in the organization. But there was a fundamental problem with that part of Delve, and that was, how do you tell people to get there in the first place? Because this was all before Teams even existed.
Yeah, because it feels more Yammery
to me. Exactly, right? So these interesting overlaps and these touch points. But Topics, again, is another app that you just surface in Teams, and it's designed where people can go in and ask questions. And there is ML, or machine learning, that recognizes the context of these questions and associates it with existing answers in your environment. You can define experts in your organization to be topics curators and assign them, like, you're responsible for knowing this area, you're responsible for knowing that area. But we're also seeing an evolution where we want citizen answers, right? We want the greater community inside the organization to be able to answer questions, and to be able to say, it's not embarrassing that you came in and you don't remember what your vacation policy is. It's not embarrassing that you're working up the line here and somebody's asked you to step over and help with something else. And maybe you need to look up the manual for where to go or what to do, right? How do I find that? It's very easy in our minds to think, how do I do this thing? But it can be very hard to translate that into a conversation that a system would understand using traditional tools. So having that topics capability where you just go in and say, how do I do this thing? I'm super frustrated, right? And have that pull back meaningful results is really, really powerful.
I'm excited about Topics.
Yeah. Are you seeing anybody, any adoption?
I haven't seen it out in the wild yet, and I don't know if it's too new that I haven't seen a full deployment of it yet. You might be able to tell me more on like the GA timeline for it. Is it GA already?
So there's elements of Topics
NDA?
that are around, and then there's some future roadmap stuff that is going to be really exciting. And what I have seen is that there's been some really great adoption, but there's also been a little bit of too much thought put into it. And then I want to caution, as folks are looking at deploying components of Viva, don't overthink it, right? You can certainly overthink it just like you can overthink anything.
Beyond the governance.
Yeah, beyond the basic governance. Don't overthink the way that you get into this, right? So the challenge that some folks have reported with Topics is that, do I need to go in and hire people to become content curators in my company and to become experts? Do I need technical writers? And no, you don't want to overcomplicate it to that point, because once you do that, we have found that participants don't want to use Topics because they feel like it's exalted data from on high. We feel like people don't want to ask questions. They don't want to feel silly. They don't want to feel like they're using my question's too small.
CEO's watching, I better not ask.
Or even I, as the content curator, feel like this answer is too small, right? And we want to discourage that. Just get in, use it, let people, as they identify important questions, the curators are like, hey, you know what? I face this question 20 times a day, right? It's important. Even if it doesn't feel important, it's important. Get an answer out there.
I see it calling out even project names. So I'll go back to my example of a engineering project. We'll call it Project ABC, 1, 2, 3, whatever you prefer. But Project ABC can actually be hyperlinked as a project, right? Viva Topics will show that it's a hyperlink with more detail behind that. So say you brought me on board in the middle of a project, and I'm new to the organization, I'm new to the project, I don't know who the stakeholders are, I don't know what the subject matter is, I don't know where the documentation is or the training manual or anything, right?
Right.
Well, the Project ABC is hyperlinked on that recent Teams post that you said we need to get Project ABC to phase 4 come next week. What does that mean to me as a new hire? And who do I ask?
Right.
So back to my original question of how do you go about searching for that today? I would probably go to the Teams search bar. I don't use SharePoint, but you'd probably go to your direct manager and say, what about this?
Right.
What am I supposed to know? And that's going to be an hour meeting, right? You're going to sit down and do a whole overview on the whole project to the stakeholders. No, this little button called Viva Topics just pulls that meeting up and shows you the resources, those individuals that are seen as the subject matter expert on that project or that topic. So I can go directly to that person as opposed to bouncing around the office or bouncing around virtual offices, asking 3, 4 people who are the stakeholders in that. And then it's going to pull up documentation that, again, from a governance perspective, the admin has made available. So there are concerns around that we'll make sure you get right up front before rolling this out. But then you can even, go back to where I live in Outlook. On a contact card, I get an email from someone internally, and maybe I don't know her entire skill set, right? Is she a subject matter expert on XYZ? Because I could really use help there. And we're talking about a SIM solution over here, but I need help with an EDR solution, right? Can she do both? Well, I can highlight the contact card, and her Viva Topics capabilities will actually show up, right?
Nice.
Right with her phone number, her LinkedIn, her email address, who she reports to, her subject matter experts all show up right within there too.
That's fantastic.
I really am pretty hopeful about what Topics looks like. Not what my subject matter expert is going to be. It's going to be like golf, happy hours.
Golf,
yeah,
right.
It's not going to be pretty, but everyone else it should be.
And Green Bay Packers, right?
And Packers, we can talk football all day. Yeah.
So you mentioned governance earlier, and we're kind of closing out the topics conversation, or the topics topic, if you will. I will call out that, you mentioned that somebody wants to get up to speed on Project ABC, but what if they shouldn't have access to Project ABC, right? So that is actually one of the few administrative touch points in all of Viva, right? And this is what we're going to talk about administration in a second. This is my sort of unnatural segue to that. When I was preparing this content, and actually when I've prepared to talk about Viva in the past, I've always found it really interesting that there just aren't dashboards for it, right? In fact, if you go out and look up what is the Viva admin dashboard, it'll give you back a result. But that result is actually just a page in the M365 admin center that lists steps you need to do to turn these things on. There's no actual
documentation
dashboard for any of these things. But kind of the one exception is topics. And really the only thing that you're choosing is whether or not all of your topics are available to all of your people and who your curators are, right? Yeah. There's a little bit more that you can get into once you have all this stuff set up. But the reality is the administration is light up the apps in Teams and go get your SharePoint guy to do some work, like identifying what the home site is. And there's a little bit of prep work that goes into that. But the reality is from a perspective of lighting it up as an architect, it's mostly machine learning, right?
Yeah, you can exclude specific SharePoint sites, or you can say, just include these specific, you can include specific SharePoint sites and everything else is excluded by default. But it allows you that administrative perspective. I think as long as you have 20,000 documents for the ML to do its delving into.
Okay. Oh boy, we went back to delve.
As long as you have 20,000 documents exposed to the tool,
right?
It'll scan all that and pull it up into the Viva suite. So, most organizations could get by, with just a couple SharePoint sites if you're looking at running a pilot and saying, help me understand what does this look like for my end users. Let's roll it out to 10, 15 users, expose some of your larger SharePoint sites that we know don't have sensitive data and see what it's feeding back. Because there are going to be some SharePoint sites with the executive salaries, for example, or HR type documentation you don't want exposed. If those are stored in SharePoint, we can talk about that, but maybe we want to block those sites before we roll it out org-wide. So there is from an administrative perspective that from a quick pilot, we can help with that, obviously. But I would definitely encourage that before just saying turn it on org-wide.
Yes, but I mean, arguably, those are things that would be governance models and administrative models of those other solutions, right? So if you've gotten the bits right here, turning it on here should be a matter of just including, excluding some sites, including, excluding some topics.
But when it should ever work for a compliance officer.
Well, okay, we're not talking compliance. We talked about that last month. We're done with compliance. So obviously all of this is a lot of power, right? There's a lot of capability that's coming into this. Microsoft doesn't like to give away power for free. So what is the pricing for Viva?
That's a great question. Actually, a lot of what we talked about today is included in your M365 E3, E5 suites, some of the OG4 as we call them.
Right.
I believe it's not connections, communications and topics are fully baked into the
Engage and Topics.
Engage and
Topics. Yeah. And learning. We didn't talk about learning.
We haven't even talked about a couple of them. Yeah, there's goals.
Yeah, goals, right?
Learning. So learning is an opportunity to embed your own organization built trainings. So think retail stores, you need to adhere to SOPs, patient care clinics we have as a customer to embed their own training into a learning module. You can link in like a
So LinkedIn.
I said
learning actually
LinkedIn,
comes in,
The puns are on my mind today.
Yeah.
So you can embed LinkedIn learning into there and some other third-party learnings as well. Goals is another one. But so the pricing model is interesting because a lot of the base functionality is included in your E3, E5. So some of the use cases we talked about today, if you have that underlying license for your user base, you can already roll them out. And it's more of just the governance / administration quick questions we get confirmed and you're off and running. There is modular capability to add a suite at a time. And there's also going to be a full suite. We've seen pricing, but we've seen pricing changing and not everything is GA just yet. So
Right.
I hate to throw out numbers, but we do have a very awesome licensing desk that can help with overall reviews and even create user profiles. But if the conversation's specific to Viva, we can delve into, there I go again, the specifics of what's going to be the most cost-effective way of rolling out the functionality you're looking for.
Yeah, and I know we've seen pretty historically Microsoft tends to, when things are in preview, to either set an extremely high price to keep you from just turning it on or saying no price until it goes GA.
Yeah.
I think that's been more their standard here lately.
And I would say for everything this suite is doing, the pricing we've seen looks very palatable.
Yeah.
Because if you look at all the, if you really are going to roll out and your end users are going to engage in the technology, which I think is a no-brainer, just the suites that we use internally, I'm so excited about and have changed the way I work and our team works. Then when you look at the costs we've seen, it's not that much of an add-on, especially you may be able to rip out third-party tools or not have to go with other solutions down the road because you have these solutions in place.
Yeah. So pricing is in flux, right?
Reach out to us.
Yeah,
we can get
it's
specific.
it's certainly baked into the e-suites. Pricing is a critical element of understanding how to get started, but so is understanding how to get started. So let's say I want to deploy Viva or some component of Viva, right? What do I need to do? I've said there's not a lot from an administrative perspective. There is a governance element, and I will call out that the private notes you mentioned in the Viva Sales thing do have a direct potential bearing on the Priva content that we discussed last month, where you got to be cautious about what you're putting in there, because while that information isn't shared to others, it does have impact on your privacy risk assessments that are coming starting next year. So how does someone get started with Viva?
Well, just to add to your point, if you think of like an old school salesman would have a Rolodex and it would have the kids' names.
Oh, yes.
What sports or hobbies they're into, right? So could I plug that into the notes I have on a contact card? Yes, but from a GDPR perspective alone, it's coming to every state in the US eventually, if it's not here already.
Virginia lights up January 1.
Yep, and I don't think North Carolina's on the list yet, but if it's not, it will be soon, where I'm based out of, and the state you're in is probably talking about it, if not enacted already. So data like that would then be sitting in the tool, right? So those kind of conversations, it's not a large pilot or consultative conversation to have, but I definitely recommend and encourage you to reach out to us as those that have done it already. Viva's a newer tool, right? So there's not many partners focused in this space that have explored the whole tool set. And we've even done workshops, sometimes funded by Microsoft, that help give an overview and create a governance plan for your organization. So that's one way. The licensing desk is another opportunity to understand the cost impact, which modules are going to make sense for my users. And some of this tribal knowledge we have from using it and seeing it.
It should be topics.
And topics. It should be a topic. See, my card is going to have more than golf. That's good. And Packers football. So all these opportunities, reach out to us, reach out to your Microsoft partner and have a discussion around it. Your Microsoft rep is definitely going to be interested in having this discussion. That's all I'll say. But with all of that said, to Adrian's point, as a not so much on the user side, but from the admin side, your admin burden is not going to be heavy by rolling out these tools, and the actual rollout is not going to be a large project. So I encourage you to at least have the conversation with your team about, does this make sense for my organization? Because I think it brings a ton of value for a very light lift on the IT team.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us in the studio
Yeah,
today and
fun.
keeping
Fire
your
still
hands
going?
warm.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I was worried that it might burn out. I didn't have to add any logs to it. This is how to do a fire.
Yeah, it's a rainy day in Richmond, so perfect day for
It is a
fireside
cold,
chat.
rainy day. Yeah. So, all right. With that, again, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to throw it back over to Christina to close us out. And I hope you have a fantastic end of your year, and we'll see you in 2023.
Yeah, so that was really great to watch on this end for a change. And Adrian not only, crushed his
Wait, for a change?
Yeah, I'm not in the seat. I was gonna say you
Okay,
crushed as
fair
always,
enough.
but Dan, not only did you do the chair justice, but I think you've raised my bar. My standard has been like now I gotta match that. But seriously, yeah, y'all, that was great. And thank you everyone for attending today. You will receive a follow-up email with a recording to this webinar by tomorrow. And in the future, be sure to keep up with us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as I'm always saying, or check our events page for more upcoming webinars. We already have a couple in January we're really excited about around Windows 365. And then I think we've got a Power Automate one as well. And if you have any questions on any of the topics covered today, please just reach out to me and I will connect you with Adrian, Dan, or the appropriate AE. And yeah, thank you again for joining us today and happy holidays.